We got to talk about it. We got to talk about that thing that nobody else has been talking about. I'm the first person. Did you know that a former Boeing whistleblower was found dead from apparent, quote, self-inflicted, quote, gunshot wound? I like the scrutiny present even in this CNN article. Like, this guy was doing, you know, like some proper corporate whistleblowing, and he literally, like the CNN meme, like found dead with suicide to the back of the head, gun wound, apparent self-inflicted. It's funny. Anyway, so this guy was a Boeing employee for a long time, and he raised the issue of what apparently several like negligent or substandard elements in their production line that then led to him getting harassed and eventually fired. And then he, you know, yeah, you know how whistleblowing tends to go. A statement provided to CNN by his lawyers says, John was in the midst of a deposition in his whistleblower retaliation case, which was finally nearing the end. He was in very good spirits and really looking forward to putting this phase of his life behind him and moving on. We didn't see any indication he would take his own life. No one can believe it. We are all devastated. We need more information about what happened to John. The Charleston police need to investigate this fully and accurately and tell the public what they find out. No detail can be left unturned. Basically, yeah, this is one of those cases where it's like so, like everything about it reeks of, oh yeah, Boeing just killed him, that even mainstream media seems to be playing into that belief to some extent. You know what I mean? It's pretty remarkable, you know. Usually that kind of scrutiny is reserved for lefty internet types, you know, CIA this, CIA that, but in this case, pretty much everyone is like, you know. Yeah, they probably killed him. They probably got his ass. A police incident report says officers were dispatched to conduct a welfare check at a Holiday Inn in Charleston shortly before 10:20 a.m. on Saturday. Oh, that explains it. He had stayed at a Holiday Inn. That's why he... Oh, okay. When they arrived, responding officers found Barnett in the driver's seat of a truck in the parking lot with a gunshot wound to the head. He was holding a handgun. Barnett was pronounced dead at the scene. This is a classic thing that people who want to kill themselves do. They present as ambitious, determined, and happy to everyone around them, and then they drive into a parking lot, and then they're holding a gun and they shoot themselves, you know? But, like, this is typically how it plays out, I feel. With no note? Or anything? Yeah. Now, I'm always doing this. If I was like a conspiratorial type, I would say that, you know, this feels like an almost stereotypically clear example. Most people don't leave notes. Yeah, but I feel like he'd have something to say given the circumstances. I don't know. I mean, obviously, it like everyone thinks that Boeing killed him. So I don't know. Nobody knows. I feel like, can you imagine if Boeing didn't kill him? Like, if this actually was a suicide, and right now Boeing is just flop sweating because they're like, what the f***? How do we, what the f***? Like, that was his last act of spite against Boeing, you know? Like, making the most obvious, apparent hit ever found. Just, nobody's going to believe Boeing's side in this, you know? Incredible. Zabak, who said the Times declined an invitation to visit the plant, said quality is the bedrock of who we are, and adding that the plant delivers, quote, the highest quality airplanes. The article said they found a piece of paper that looked like a note. The police said there was a piece of paper found next to him that looked like a note. It's an odd way of phrasing it. But okay. All right. I don't know. Anyway, when reached for comment regarding Barnett's death, Boeing issued a statement saying, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing and our thoughts are with his family and friends." Again, like the PR rep guy, like flustered, sweating, panicking, like, what the f did we say? We didn't kill him. What did we say? The stockholders are like, we don't know, dude. Anyway, I want to talk about what he actually did. Look, cause of death, alleged suicide on his Wikipedia. So he worked at Boeing for 32 years. For 7 of those, he was a quality control manager. Seems relevant to what we're going to discover. For Boeing South Carolina plant, which produces the 787 Dreamliner. Let's see. A senior manager downgraded Barnett for, quote, using email to express process violations in place of face-to-face communication, which Barnett took to mean he shouldn't put problems in writing. Ah, wait, have they owned up to this? So they're literally saying, don't leave a paper trail for our ups. If there are any problems, say it in person. If you put it in email, it gets left in the server, and it can be, like the cops can pull it if they want to later on. Said manager also pushed Barnett to get better at, quote, working in the gray areas and help find a way while maintaining compliance. Love to be a quality control manager at a Boeing plane factory and being told to work in the gray areas, you know? I love doing this. Barnett claimed that in 2016, a senior manager installed a scrapped, dented hydraulic tube in a plane. He filed a complaint with Human Resources. Boeing stated they had investigated and hadn't substantiated those claims. Barnett raised issues of more missing defective parts to management, fearing that they had been installed. He claimed that his bosses directed him to finish paperwork on missing parts without determining where they had ended up. No action was taken by managers. Barnett claimed workers did not follow procedures to track components, allowing the loss of parts and later installation of defective parts. He stated that these installations were to prevent delays in the production line. Yeah, I haven't seen the John Oliver episode in Boeing safety, so I can't really draw any relations to it. I can't make any references to it, but my understanding is that John Oliver did not have good things to say about Boeing's corporate safety, as was the lack of following procedure. A 2017 Federal Aviation Administration report determined that at least 53 non-conforming parts were missing and ordered Boeing to take remedial action. 53! Jesus! Oh, and this links to metal shavings. Barnett reported he had discovered clusters of metal shavings left near electrical systems for flight controls, which could have catastrophic results if the shavings were able to penetrate the wiring. He stated that he repeatedly urged his bosses to take action, but they instead transferred him to another part of the plant. In 2017, the FAA issued a directive mandating removal of shavings pre-delivery. Boeing claimed they were complying and working to improve the design to avoid the issue, but determined the issue was not a flight safety issue. After retirement, he came forward to discuss numerous malpractices of Boeing with British broadcaster BBC, overworking employees, not providing proper maintenance to aircraft. He also noted that many of the oxygen systems for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner may be faulty as a result, showing casing tests which showed a failure rate of 25%. In 2019, he appeared in a New York Times article raising additional quality issues at his former factory, speaking about the metal shavings. Boeing subsequently denied his assertions. However, a 2017 review by the FAA had upheld several of Barnett's concerns. It was discovered that over 50 non-conforming plane components in the facility were considered missing as their location could not be found. In early 2024, we're getting up to right before he died, Barnett issued further warnings regarding Boeing's work culture and vehicle safety following Alaska Airlines Flight 1282. Ah, yes, the classic. This is when the door blew out. Remember? Yes. Just flying along, this totally normal thing to happen, you know? Door blows out of the plane. Just happened. How embarrassing. Boeing has an open door policy. Class action lawsuit against Boeing, citing injuries to passengers and emotional trauma. Seems fair. I was wondering, they recovered the door from the backyard of a home in Cedar Hills, Oregon. Hey! Just thunk. You know? I'm glad it didn't hit anyone. Free door? Yeah, honestly, the fact that it landed in somebody's backyard is already, super unlucky, right? I mean, I guess it happened a little while after they took off, so they were still near the airport and therefore near, civilization. But, 99% of Earth is just empty shit, right? So, glad it didn't hit anyone. I would not give that back, Lamau. I would keep that shit. It's kind of like Excalibur, where you can have it if you can lift it up, and this is probably 120 pounds. Maybe the person who, who lives here just couldn't yoink it up. So the door coming off is because of corporate greed and not the black pilot. Oh, well, we don't know. We don't have an official FAA investigation into whether or not high melanin concentrations in the pilot are capable of structurally destabilizing the Boeing aircraft that you're flying. Maybe the Republicans have a point on this. It's hard to say, People are still talking about this. No, I haven't, Blabato. Barnett was in Charleston, South Carolina, the week of March 12, 2024, for his deposition in his defamation lawsuit against Boeing. Before his death, he had given a deposition and undergone cross-examination from his own lawyers. According to a March 2024 interview with his lawyer, Brian Knowles, Barnett was reportedly supposed to report for the third day of his deposition for further questioning, but did not show up or respond to calls on that next day. He was found dead shortly thereafter. On March 9th, in his Dodge Ram in a hotel parking lot from what the Charleston County Coroner's Office characterized as a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And the police are actively investigating. And that's the story, you know? Boeing has a lot of money. Do you think they could afford to rent the CIA make you kill yourself gun, right? The gun that the CIA used on Epstein, where they don't actually have to do any work themselves. They just fire the like beam of protons directly into your brain that makes you want to kill yourself, you know? Wait, real? Yeah. They got the headache ray gun, they've got the heart attack gun, they've got the suicide gun. They've got a lot of stuff. Akira, yeah. I don't know, the feds are pretty pissed at Boeing for f***ing around with military procurement orders at the moment. I don't think they would go for it right now. You know, pardon me for going on a little tangent here, but did you know it wasn't always like this? I know it's difficult to imagine. Like, America has always been, to some extent or another, an oligarchy, right? Like, it's not like corporations 200 years ago were all noble and effective and the people who ran them were, you know, enlightened or none of that bullshit, you know? That being said, there are definitely some downward trends in the behaviors of corporations today. It reminds me a little bit of political leadership. The American founding fathers, right? Slavers, many of them despicable men, but there's one thing you can't deny. They were pretty smart guys, a lot of them, you know, I'm not saying they were perfect or anything, but, you know, they wrote a lot of stuff. You know, they were the aristocrats of their time. They had some brains to them. You know, you have to give them that much at least. George Washington was a competent general. You know, he didn't get to the presidency off the back of just being wealthy, though that certainly helped. Nowadays, of course, it seems, you know, anyone can be president. Joe Biden is legally dead. Donald Trump has an IQ of 85. You know, it's the more and more this system persists, I guess, the less merit seems to have to do with it in a lot of cases, because the longer any system exists, the further you are from its formation, and the more likely it is that either inertia or institutional entrenchment are carrying forward any given candidate, you know? Does that make any sense? I'm talking very generally here. I'm just saying, I think that to an extent this is the case with corporations as well, right? There are lots of tech or weapons companies that were founded initially by people who really knew stuff about tech or weapons, right? Like, a lot of early companies were founded by the people who invented the machine that they then went on to sell and improve upon and popularize. Again, speaking generally, but if you look back at Boeing's origins, right? The more time that has passed, the further Boeing's management has gotten from Boeing's engineers. I think that this is a general trend that can be identified in a lot of industries. If a corporation's been around for too long, you know, the more and more money takes over as the dominant interest rather than letting the engineers have their fun. You would want the engineers to be the ones making the decision for military procurement and planes. That's, in my opinion. I think they should be the people making the real decisions. But yeah, it's just a general trend. So with Boeing now, like, Boeing has really talented people who work there. The engineers at Boeing have not gotten stupider. I imagine that many of the people who work there, who work both in the planes and the military side of things, you know, broadly, are really, really, really smart, talented people. Some of them might even be geniuses. Like, if they were given the space, they could do revolutionary things to the science of blowing people up from afar. I don't know, making people go fast. Many such cases, right? But they're not the ones making the high-level corporate decisions, so how much is that worth? When you see stuff like this, right? Like, this wasn't an engineer's fuck-up. An engineer did not design this in such a way that it broke down in the way it did while being perfectly confident in their calculations. It almost never happens that way. It's money men pressing their thumb on the scale. Do it cheaper. Do it faster. Get through the assembly line with less oversight. Oversight takes a while. Double and triple checking takes a while. Get it done faster. We need more money, because ultimately they're responsible to, or beholden to, the shareholders, you know? Not to say engineers can't make mistakes, but generally when you see ups in the production line, it's not the engineers who are doing it. Engineers are, generally speaking, fastidious, intelligent, and autistic, right? It's the same thing with civic engineering. Whenever you hear a story about like a bridge collapsing or a building falling apart, it's not like the construction workers were the ones that f***ed it up usually, right? Usually the construction workers are supervised by the engineer or the engineering team, and they tend to do good work. Not saying they can't make mistakes, but they tend to do good work. Usually when problems crop up in that field, it's because someone on the funding end of things, someone, well, it could also be architects, because I don't like architects very much. It's someone further back from the actual site of construction, somebody who's working on the, the money end of things, the idea end of things. They get greedy, they f it up. I don't know. I don't want this to be like a, everyone's getting stupider kind of deal. And I don't want people to despair and think like, oh, Boeing's falling apart, everything's falling apart, like that's just how it is. It's not just how it is. There are specific corporate decisions that lead to things like this happening. Like, for instance, the rental of the CIA suicide gun. Really, though, he might have killed himself. I don't know. I don't know what the point on speculating on the subject would really be. It's just really funny how, like, comically apparent this is as a hit. It's just funny. It's funny. I mean, the death is tragic, of course, but the circumstances are, You can actually look up how much of a company profit was spent in R&D and expansion/raises, and it nosedives after Reagan legalized stock buybacks. I should look into that fully. It'd be for a good research stream one day. Yeah, it used to be illegal for corporations to do stock buybacks, but then, as it turns out, when you give the bourgeoisie the ability to spend an ungodly amount of corporate money on, hey, what if we just made our shareholders richer and nothing else? What if we just did that? Like, what if we had, a bunch of money we could spend on anything like R&D? The idea that corporations make decisions that are to the long-term benefit of the field they're in, as opposed to them just doing short-term enrichment of their shareholders. Like, we know how this goes. It's crazy how many graphs changed direction after Reagan. Yep. Can you turn links back on? I have an article that really ties into what you're on about, but I want to play Tomb Raider. Fine. Good luck. You're about to be posting in a sea of people posting links. Oh, no, you got there first. Nice. The 1997 merger that paved the way for the Boeing 737 MAX crisis. Look at all them planes. Words? You didn't tell me there'd be words in this article. Blotto, Jesus Christ. I would have to read? You people expect too much of me. I already have, as Hassan would describe it, the world's hardest job. We'll look into this later, I promise. Maybe. Possibly. Perhaps. Your link is broken, last wish. I don't know whether Boeing killed the guy, but the broader story should be the stuff he was whistleblowing on, right? If it turns out the cops were one way or another, like, I don't know. It's kind of like the Epstein thing as well. I don't actually know what happened to Epstein. No one does. Well, a few people do, I imagine. The point shouldn't be like, I definitely believe this or that in Epstein. The point is rather like, what systems lead to a position where a child sex trafficking multimillionaire who had the ear of some of the world's most powerful people can, under mysterious circumstances, die right before potentially being able to testify. Like, there are so many structural failures that took place before him actually dying there that at that point, I feel like how he died was irrelevant, honestly. Like, what does it change? You know what I mean? If he had just killed himself purely of his own volition with no outside pressure, something that, again, can't ever be proved, would that change any of the prior circumstances? Like, it really wouldn't. Like, what would that, I guess, who would that absolve? In the meantime, with Epstein and with this, it's funny. Did Boeing kill it? It's funny if Boeing killed him. It's funny if it just looks like Boeing killed him but didn't. It's funny either way. With Epstein, it's funny to imagine that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump bumped into each other on the way to his cell, both of them carrying a length of rope. What are you going to do? What kind of dirt did they have that Boeing had to whack him over, though? Well, presumably, maybe they took that long to figure out how the suicide gun works. Imagine this guy set things up so perfectly to destroy Boeing's image because nothing they could do or say would refute the accusations. God, a gamer moment. Yeah, no kidding. Imagine if Like the dude was old and not in the best of health, right? So he feels like a heart attack coming on, and he's like, I've been preparing for this. So he drives out to a hotel. He like gets out like tape that he has other people's fingerprint oils on, and like stamps it around his car while he's seizing from the heart attack. And then he puts on, you know, like a glove and like reaches for the gun in the car and shoots himself in the back of the head, but then like slumps. So it's like, and he's like, yeah, my final act of resistance. These guys. Like reaches his arm out through the window of the back door and like angles it so it looks like the bullet came from inside the from outside the car, you know, like just like a Rube Goldberg machine, basically. Yeah, exactly. Or like there's a second stage man there ready to like dispose of the incriminating evidence and get rid of the Rube Goldberg machine, the glove and everything, just set everything up perfectly. So Danganronpa 2. Yeah, basically Danganronpa 2. Yes. Yes.